an industry, fashion is very, very isolating. In India, we're still not really used to spending on luxury when it comes to fashion. We have clients coming and be like, नहीं ये pink नहीं है, आप ये red में कर दो मेरे लिए, और ये जो sequence वाला है ना आपने ये वाला इसको green कर दो. So you don't even have respect for me as a designer.
Everyone talks to founders about how they got here, but we want to really know what happens after. After the big launch, after the store got busy, after people really stop asking you, so is this really a business? Today we're sitting with Shubhika, the mastermind behind Papa Don't Preach, one of the country's most recognizable maximalist brands that's dressing celebrities not just in Bollywood, but also on international red carpets. So we want to skip the origin story. We want to get to the messy middles because this is tweak it till you make it. Exactly.
I like that.
Shubhika,
Yeah.
yesterday when we spoke, you told me that you think your brand is in its middle age right
Yeah.
now. It's established, but not established enough. Does it get easy at this point?
It gets harder because then you're no longer the young startup that can just make all the mistakes and put out cute collections. You're kind of competing with the really established brands already. So your price points are competing with that. You have to have the kind of stores, you have to give the experience. Because here we're trying to sell luxury, not just walk into a boutique and I'll make something beautiful for you, but we're creating products that somebody's going to want to spend their really hard-earned money on and want to preserve. So it kind of gets harder for you then to really convince people that, this is really value for money. And because in India, we're still not really used to spending on luxury when it comes to fashion. If you compare the luxury brands internationally versus ours, our oldest designer here, probably the most senior, is 40 years in the business. Whereas you compare it, they've had like centuries to create their luxury brands. We are very young. So when I say I'm like 14 years in the business and I'm calling myself mid-age, it's actually not a fact. I would still be seen as a baby in terms of the number of years we have. I just feel like as a brand, we have so much to say and express and so many new markets to kind of capture. But at the same time, like any other business, the cash flows always are the great pinch in the, I don't know, all parts of your body.
So you mentioned Papa Don't Preach is independently run. You're running a team of 200 people.
Yeah.
Fashion is insanely competitive.
Yeah.
Does it get lonely?
It does get lonely, and I'm very lucky that I now in 2021 I got a partner on board who's also family, Abhijit Bansali, and he comes from a diverse experience of microfinancing and real estate. Anything to really succeed in life, the yin and the yang, which is the masculine and feminine energies, really need to be balanced. And the best way to kind of find that balance is inside you. But I feel like if I probably did not have him, then you find that in your friends and your families and in like personal mentors that you may or may not have. But as an industry, fashion is very, very isolating and it's very cliquey, and not just in India, it's internationally too. There isn't so much exchange of information, which is why as an industry, I feel we're taking much longer to kind of organize ourselves. I cannot really go on LinkedIn and say I'm looking for a embroidery production here. Like, what is that? It is just not organized. Nobody is really taught this in schools. Even if you go into fashion schools, we're being taught how to make really beautiful, I think, evening gowns. We're not even being taught how to design really cool everyday wear or how to design for all body types. So I think that is isolating because you have to figure everything out on your own. There are months where the sales are great, but there is so much unpredictability across the board now, if you see in businesses, not just in fashion, that you just feel like, am I the only one who's really sucking right now? Like, can I just pick up the phone and be like, hey, what are your numbers? What are your sales? What do we do? What are the issues? How did we help organize the karigars, the artisans? There's a really brilliant book. It's called The Luxury Strategy. They basically talk about all the luxury brands, right from cars to food to restaurants, that have really put their countries on the global map respectively. And there's an interesting chapter on India where they say that India is the only country that actually probably was an originator of a lot of the luxury. You know from our royalty how luxuriously we lived and kind of dressed. But it's the only country that hasn't been able to establish itself as an authority or even take a brand outside of India, barring say Taj hotels or like a few alcohol brands that have managed to do that. And that is, I think, happened because we haven't really come together as an industry and kind of helped each other and helped our artisans and our karigari get elevated. In the food chain, they still sit right at the bottom. But you go to Italy and somebody's like, okay, you go to that shoemaker and get a shoe custom made for you, and you'll be like, oh my god, like this Italian boot
Craftsmanship.
maker, he crafted this shoe for me, and he'll be like, oh no, that's not good and that's not going to fit you, and you will listen to him. But imagine our Indian karigars or like our tailors, our embroiderers who are so masterful in what they do. Who's gonna, I mean, if they tell you today, even as a designer in India, we have clients coming and he'll be like, नहीं ये pink नहीं है, आप ये red में कर दो मेरे लिए, और ये जो sequence वाला है ना आपने ये वाला इसको green कर दो. So you don't even have respect for me as a designer. I can't even imagine what you would, if say our master जी were to say नहीं मैम ये अच्छा नहीं लगेगा, you would say आपको क्या पता, So we haven't elevated the artist or the craftsman to a level where we can become authorities.
You also bring a lot of heart to what you're doing. But I know you've also said that sometimes you have to put your position before your emotions. And that obviously comes in the way when you're trying to grow a business because you have to look at profits. So has that happened to you? How do you learn this?
That was a really hard learning. As I was talking about the yin and the yang, I was very emotionally driven. And before my partner joined us in 2021, we were a team of about 45 odd people, and it was a very close knit family. And it was really, and we were not making any profits, and that was fine. The brand was doing really well. We were breaking even after probably 10 years in the business. We were finally breaking even. We weren't for a really long time. Paris Hilton was wearing us and Chrissy Teigen was wearing us without PR. Like, we had no PR agency. It was all organically. They messaged us on Instagram and it happened. I was running the company as like I don't want to call it a mom and pop shop, but it was like that, right? When he joined in, I think he had the ability to really think at a macro level. And we immediately went from 45 people to 300. Like today, we're at 200. And I think that transition was extremely painful. We made a lot of wrong hires, extra hires. Even when it came to karigars, we built like 6 factories outside of Bombay. And the scaling up was painful, but scaling back down, realizing that, oh my God, like this is way more than we can chew, and it's a bad call. That was a really challenging time for me. And I found myself getting very, very emotional about it. And I remember him sitting me down and he said, तुम्हारी ईमानदारी अगर तुम्हारी कुर्सी से नहीं है तो फिर किसी से भी नहीं होगी. Your first responsibility is the chair that you're sitting on in the company. So you're not everybody's mother. That's not the chair you're sitting on. You're sitting as a CEO. So what is your responsibility? What will you do? You will first ensure that your business is not bleeding. It's not in losses. Today, if you are feeling bad about letting go of say 10 people, tomorrow if your company it continues to do so poorly, you'll have to let go of all 100. What is worse? So that was a very hard thing for me to trust. For the longest time, I was like, maybe he's not getting it. Like, he's a man. He doesn't get it. Like, look at these people. They're my family. They're my... So, I mean, then I really realized that it was true.
But you rightly said, like, on the outside, it looks like you're growing a business. I mean, anyone who sees Papa Don't Preach on the outside, she's done some great collaborations with international brands, Indian brands. You've had a collaboration with Garfield. There was 7 Fridays with a watch collaboration. There was chocolates as well. So anything you can think of, they've collaborated with. Like, that takes creative genius, right? On the inside, there's a completely different mental war going on. And I truly believe that self-doubt is the signature of a creative mind. So it's not easy to get through all of this. So what does a hard day at work really feel like for you?
I think that hard days always where you're feeling extremely pulled in all directions. So as a creative person, there are so many times I'm just like, but I'm just a designer. Like, why are you asking me about, TDS nahi gaya and GST nahi gaya? And, why is the landlord calling me to meet him? And like, I just want to design.
But do you have a crying room in your office where everyone can just go throw a tantrum, get over it, and then go back to
No,
work?
I think we started off with having a lot of space in our office, but now we don't have it anymore. It is also a happy problem. But I have two cats in my office, and that helps me.
Mhm.
Actually, having animals in your office is a wonderful gift. Like I go and actually bury my face in his belly for really long, and then I go back out. And yes, it is lonely because barring like a few designers who are my friends, very few, like 2,
Mhm.
there's nobody else I can message. Are you also going through this? Like other sales like sitting at 0 right now? And they're like, yeah, it is hard. Don't worry. I found out even this one is not. Then you're like, okay, cool. So now what do we do? How do we pay salaries this month? Like it's a month on month thing.
I think everyone who's an entrepreneur understands
Yeah.
that. I like the fact that you said there are two people who you can call
Yeah.
and ask these questions, and I think that's something that's very unique to you. Not a lot of people can do that because I also know that you worked really hard to build these
Yeah.
relationships, right? And I think having a mentor nowadays is not all that it used to be. You need career sponsors, you need contemporaries who've got your back,
Yeah.
and you've not studied fashion here.
No.
So you've had to build those relationships. What did it take to actually build that
Yeah.
clique for yourself here?
So I studied journalism here. And then I went to London for a really short 7-month course to do fashion. And then I was like, and this was back in 2008. Yes, I am that old. Okay. That time in India, there was no Zara, Vero Moda, nothing, right? So I'm looking at Topshop and I'm looking at like, it was beautiful. Bond Street was like, I was really not in college. I was just on the streets there. And I called up my dad and I said, India really needs me. Like, what the hell? They don't even know. They don't even know that they don't have like this high street where, like, what are they? And my dad said, why have other people not thought of it? I said, I don't know. Like, when you're young, it's so great to be young because you're just so delusional.
Yeah.
And that delusional confidence. And he was like, why don't you do an internship? And I did a very brief internship. And she got selected for New York Fashion Week, the designer I was
Designer you're
working
working
for. And my dad said, you should go with her and you should get the experience and I'll pay for your ticket. And I said, no, 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 no. India needs me.
I
I'm
love
coming
this.
back and I'm starting the brand. And I regret that because I do wish that I had worked in the industry in India because that matters a lot. So when I go and speak to students, I'm like, everybody who's sitting next to you, know them really well, help them out. Do not isolate yourself and like do these solo projects, do your team projects, keep in touch with your teachers, your seniors, because that's the network that's going to help you. Everybody that I know, the 2 designers also that I can pick up the phone and call is through my Instagram work, just showing up there at their events, like going and, being there and supporting them and then finding a reciprocation from there.
I want to ask you one question. You're a very ambitious woman. That's why the brand is where it is. Did you ever unlearn anything as you went along?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I had to unlearn emotionally enmeshing myself with everybody who works with me. I had to work with not bringing my own trauma and pain to the team and kind of taking it out there, or not looking at my work as my avenue for letting that go, like my trauma, and not allowing others also to use theirs against me, which happens very often. And I had to unlearn that there is this very idealistic way of running a company, of what company culture really means. When I had to let go of the 300 to 200, and at the same time I was giving talks on how eventually in life I want to build a Karigar Academy. where this is an idea that I keep talking about and I hope it sticks somewhere. And I'm sitting in Harvard and I'm trying to like get people excited to back or like create a fund to do this, where we invite um, the second generation of the karigars who are working with me to a school for karigars where karigari, where they are taught computers and they are taught life skills and they're taught finances and English and whatever language you want to learn, and you're taught hand embroidery, so that after you leave with a certificate you have a choice of practicing embroidery or you have a choice of doing something else. While I was doing having these conversations, I'm having here to downsize my team. So I felt like, oh my God, am I a fraud? Like those were really hard times for me. That's when that, be faithful to your seat first, your responsibility first. And all emotions come after that. So when I really reset my brain like that, that was a big unlearning. Like you can't just emotionally be like, no, I will take care of all of you. But I mean, you just have to you pay them salary,
Thank you for being so vulnerable with us and
course.
sharing all these details so transparently.
Lovely
Last
having you,
question.
and thank you so much for coming here.
I do know about a person, a feudal lord, who had lots of snakes on his estate, and it became one of his favorite pastimes to catch these snakes.